train your aura to attract wealth. Where your energy goes, your reality follows. This idea lies at the heart of Carl Jung's teachings. And today, on Spiritual Wisdom, we're diving into how training your aura can become one of the most powerful pathways to attracting wealth, opportunity, and inner abundance. Your aura is not just a spiritual concept. It's the energetic signature you carry into every room, every conversation, and every decision you make. When you learn to strengthen it, align it, and direct it with intention, your external world begins to shift in remarkable ways. As you listen, I invite you to ask yourself, what kind of energy am I sending out each day? And if you're ready to step into a wealthier, more empowered version of yourself, comment below. I attract abundance effortlessly. Let's begin this journey of growth, alignment, and transformation together. 1. Wealth is energetic, not just practical. Wealth is not created at the level of physical effort, but at the level of energetic alignment, where your aura becomes the true source of attraction long before any external action takes place. When you understand that wealth responds to vibration rather than pressure, you begin to see why some people grind endlessly yet remain stuck, while others move toward abundance with a sense of clarity and ease. Your aura broadcasts your deepest beliefs, emotions, and expectations, making it a silent messenger that reveals your internal state to the world. And this energy either opens pathways for abundance or creates invisible walls that keep it away. In spirituality and spiritual awakening, this understanding becomes essential because the energy you radiate is more influential than the words you speak or the strategies you follow. And every opportunity that moves toward you is first responding to the emotional frequency you carry. This is why wealth often bypasses those who chase it through force, because when your internal state vibrates with fear, scarcity, or self-doubt, your aura sends out a signal of resistance, and life reflects that resistance back through closed doors, obstacles, and missed chances. Even the most practical steps fail when your energy contradicts your intentions. But the moment your aura aligns with confidence, openness, and self-worth, you naturally shift from struggle to magnetism. Your aura becomes a field of resonance rather than friction. And this resonance is what draws resources, people, opportunities, and ideas toward you in ways that feel almost effortless. You no longer feel like you are pushing against life. Instead, life begins responding to you with synchronicities that reaffirm your growing alignment. As your spiritual awakening deepens, you begin to recognize the emotional patterns that weaken your aura of old wounds, limiting beliefs, unresolved guilt, or memories of failure that continue to shape how you see yourself. These inner distortions act like static in your energetic field, interrupting the natural flow of abundance. And until they are healed, you may try everything externally, but still feel blocked internally. Transforming your aura requires emotional clarity, self-honesty, and the willingness to release energies that no longer reflect who you are becoming. Because wealth cannot settle in a field filled with internal conflict. When you purify your emotional energy, you purify your aura. And this purification becomes the foundation for a new identity that naturally attracts prosperity. Your aura also shapes how others perceive you, your presence, your confidence, your stability, long before you speak a single word. People respond not to what you claim you can do, but to the energy you emanate. And when your aura is grounded, expansive, and steady, it inspires trust and cooperation. This is why some individuals seem to attract support easily. Their aura communicates certainty, authenticity, and inner alignment. Your energy becomes a blueprint that others can feel. And when that blueprint carries the frequency of abundance, aligned people and opportunities begin gravitating toward you without force or persuasion. Training your aura means training your inner world, your thoughts, emotions, expectations, and self-perception, because every shift within you creates a shift in the field around you. Wealth is ultimately a reflection of energetic coherence, the harmony between your desires and the vibration you embody. When your inner world becomes clear and aligned, your outer world adjusts to match it, and abundance begins to flow in a way that feels natural rather than forced. Wealth becomes not something you chase, but something you allow, something you attract by becoming the person whose energy resonates with prosperity. Have you ever trained your aura intentionally to attract wealth? If yes, share your experience in the comments so others can learn from your journey. If not, comment, "I will train my aura," to begin aligning yourself with the energy of abundance today. 2. Your aura reflects your inner beliefs about worth. Your aura reflects your inner beliefs about worth, and the deeper you look, the clearer you'll see that everything you attract is shaped not by what you claim to want, but by what your subconscious has been trained to expect. When your inner world carries fear, scarcity, guilt, or a lifelong belief that you are not enough, your energy begins to reject the very things you consciously desire. You can repeat affirmations of abundance every day. Yet if your nervous system has learned that receiving more is unsafe or unfamiliar, it will quietly pull you back into the patterns you once survived, because the mind speaks wishes while the body speaks truth. This is why so many hardworking people feel stuck. They are fighting against invisible emotional programs that were formed in childhood, during moments of instability, or in seasons of disappointment that taught them to shrink instead of expand. Your aura remembers those experiences. It carries the imprint of every story you've told yourself about who you are and what you are allowed to receive. When the subconscious equates wealth with pressure, attention, responsibility, or loss, it protects you by repelling the very opportunities you pray for. This is not failure, it is a survival response. And until you understand this connection between energy and belief, you keep trying to change your life from the outside, never realizing the real shift must begin within. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This truth sits at the heart of spirituality and spiritual development, because transforming your aura is not about pretending to be positive or forcing yourself to think differently. It is about gently retraining your inner world to feel safe with expansion, worthy of abundance, and open to receiving without fear. The moment your nervous system learns that wealth is not a threat, your aura naturally expands, your choices become aligned with growth, and the universe begins responding to you with opportunities that match your new identity. You'll notice this shift in small ways first. You begin speaking to yourself with more kindness. You stop apologizing for wanting a better life. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. Each time you choose self-respect over self-doubt, your aura strengthens. Each moment you allow yourself to rest, breathe, regulate, and return to your center, your energy becomes clearer, steadier, and more magnetic. And as your inner world changes, so does your outer world, not through force, but through alignment. The more you honor your value, the more you attract experiences that honor it too. Wealth begins to feel natural instead of distant. Opportunities begin to feel deserved instead of accidental. You stop chasing and start receiving because your frequency finally says yes instead of I'm afraid. This is the quiet, powerful transformation that happens when you heal the beliefs beneath your desires and allow your aura to vibrate with confidence, safety, and self-worth. 3. Train your aura. Like an athlete trains the body. You train your aura the same way an athlete trains their body, because your energy field is shaped every single day by your thoughts, emotions, habits, words, and surroundings. And whether you realize it or not, you are already practicing an energetic routine that either strengthens your aura or quietly weakens it. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this reveals a powerful truth. Your aura is simply your unconscious made visible. When you carry old fears about money, inherited scarcity beliefs from your family, or unprocessed emotions that tell you expansion is dangerous, your aura becomes tight and contracted, silently pushing away the opportunities you consciously claim that you want. You may say you desire wealth, but if your subconscious associates abundance with stress, failure, judgment, or loss, your aura vibrates with resistance, and the universe responds not to your words, but to your frequency. This is why the foundation of spiritual wisdom teaches that energy comes before action, that your inner atmosphere shapes your outer results, and that wealth is not something you chase, but something you learn to hold. Training your aura begins with repetition, because every repeated thought becomes a belief, and every repeated emotion becomes a vibration. Athletes do not become strong by lifting a weight one time. They become strong through consistent, intentional practice. The same is true for your aura. When you repeatedly choose empowering thoughts instead of fearful ones, when you practice emotional discipline by regulating yourself instead of reacting impulsively, when you speak words that affirm your worth instead of shrinking yourself, you are strengthening the energetic muscles that determine what you attract. Your aura responds more powerfully to emotion than to logic. So if you want to attract wealth, you must train yourself to feel safe, grounded, and deserving of abundance. If you want expansion, your nervous system must stop interpreting more as danger. If you want prosperity, your subconscious must stop associating success with chaos. This is inner training. This is energetic conditioning. This is how you build an aura that wealth wants to enter. Even your environment becomes part of your spiritual training. The spaces you spend time in either elevate your vibration or drain it. The people you talk to either expand your sense of possibility or contract it. The conversations you allow shape the emotional climate of your aura. When you clean your room, speak kindly to yourself, practice gratitude in the morning, or let go of a scarcity narrative you've been repeating for years. You are not doing something small. You are reshaping your frequency. William James wrote, "A change in the inner man will change the outer world. And this is exactly how energetic training works. The moment your inner state shifts, the world begins to rearrange itself around you. You stop chasing opportunities and start magnetizing them. You stop forcing outcomes and begin allowing them. You stop doubting your path and start trusting the intelligence of your energy. Wealth is not attracted to desperation. It is attracted to coherence. It moves toward the person whose aura can hold it without collapsing. So every day, you train your aura with intention, consistency, emotional clarity, and self-worth. You are preparing yourself not just to receive wealth, but to live in a state where wealth naturally flows toward you, because your energy finally says, I am ready for more. If you're ready to strengthen your energetic field the way an athlete strengthens their body, comment below. I train my aura daily. 4. Identity and belief shape your financial reality. You must reclaim authorship of your identity, because the deeper truth is that your financial reality is never shaped by effort alone, but by the frequency of who you believe yourself to be. And as Carl Jung taught, the unconscious silently creates the patterns we later mistake for destiny, which is why wealth flows not to those who merely desire it, but to those whose identity is aligned with receiving it. When you look at your life through the lens of spirituality and spiritual awakening, you begin to see that money responds to identity the way a river responds to gravity. It moves naturally toward those who believe they are worthy of being supported, expanded, and enriched. This is why inherited scarcity programming must be recognized and released, because it is not just a thought pattern, but an energetic cage, a subtle voice passed down through generations telling you that wanting more is dangerous, that abundance is unrealistic, or that you must struggle to earn what others receive with ease. Every time you hear those internal echoes, those quiet, restrictive beliefs, you are hearing the remnants of someone else's worldview that has been living inside you like an outdated script, shaping your financial decisions, sabotaging your confidence, and lowering the vibration of your aura long before you take action. Reclaiming your identity means rewriting this script from the inside out, choosing to define yourself not by the limitations of the past, but by the possibilities of the present. And this shift is not about blind positivity, but about energetic responsibility. Your aura is always broadcasting a message to the world, and that message is built from your core beliefs. Do you feel deserving? Do you trust yourself? Do you believe life supports you? Do you expect expansion or fear loss? These questions quietly form the foundation of your financial reality. When you believe you are unworthy, your aura becomes hesitant, dim, and easily influenced by fear. But when you believe you are deserving, your aura becomes grounded, magnetic, and naturally aligned with opportunity. This is not magic. This is alignment. It is the inner posture that determines whether you shrink or rise, hesitate or move, doubt or receive. To build a belief system rooted in abundance, you must begin by observing the emotional reflexes that appear each time you desire something greater. Notice the subtle contraction in your body, the quick spike of doubt, the inherited guilt that whispers, "Who do you think you are?" These responses are not your truth. They are inherited shadows, psychological imprints created by environments that lived in survival rather than expansion. As your spiritual awakening deepens, you learn to separate your authentic self from these inherited constraints, replacing them with beliefs that honor your worthiness instead of diminishing it. With every empowered belief you adopt, your aura strengthens. With every fear you release, your identity stabilizes. With every act of trust, your energy shifts from scarcity to abundance. This is how you become the kind of person wealth is naturally drawn to, not through force, not through desperation, but through inner authorship. You stop chasing abundance and begin embodying it. You stop doubting your worth and begin affirming it with your choices, your boundaries, your expectations, and your emotional tone. Wealth becomes an extension of your inner certainty. Your aura becomes a field of clarity and magnetism, and your identity becomes the silent, powerful truth that shapes your financial reality long before money ever arrives. 5. Emotional calibration is key. Emotional calibration is key because your aura responds to the emotional tone you live in every single day. And when you want to attract wealth, you must begin by reshaping the emotional environment you carry within. This transformation starts with 3 daily rituals that act as energetic anchors, helping you strengthen your inner world and elevate your spiritual development so that abundance can recognize you, move toward you, and stay with you. The first ritual is the emotional audit, a moment of honest self-checking where you pause to acknowledge the emotions rising inside you without fighting or suppressing them. Because when you ignore fear, doubt, or frustration, they quietly influence your aura in ways you don't notice. But when you name them and meet them with awareness, you reclaim your power to choose who you want to be. This ritual reminds your body and nervous system that you're safe, that you're not repeating an old pattern, and that you're capable of shifting into a more grounded, abundant state. As you reframe these emotions into thoughts that support your growth, your aura becomes clearer, steadier, and more aligned with the flow of wealth you want to receive. The second ritual is affirmation, a practice many underestimate yet deeply rooted in spirituality because it speaks directly to the subconscious mind, the part of you that decides what feels possible, what feels safe, and what you naturally attract. When you speak to yourself as if wealth is already present, saying things like, "I am open to abundance," "I welcome new opportunities," or "Prosperity feels natural to me," you're not reciting empty words. You're reprogramming your inner identity to match the life you want. Your nervous system doesn't argue, it accepts repetition as truth. And with time, these affirmations soften the fears that once held you back. They shift the tone of your aura, making confidence feel natural and allowing you to move through the world with the energy of someone who already knows abundance is part of their path. The third ritual is visualization, the practice of embodying your future self from the inside out until it becomes second nature. This is where spirituality and spiritual development meet practical transformation. Because when you imagine yourself succeeding, seeing how you speak, how you stand, how you make decisions, you begin to align your emotional frequency with the reality you want to create. Visualization teaches your mind and aura to recognize your future before it arrives physically, and that recognition becomes a magnet, pulling new opportunities, supportive people, and aligned experiences into your life. Your aura starts sending out a clear message: I am ready for more. And the universe responds in ways that feel natural, effortless, and surprisingly fast. Together, these three rituals train your aura to vibrate at the frequency of wealth by reshaping your emotions, your identity, and your inner vision. Emotional auditing clears the noise, affirmation rewires your self-belief, and visualization activates the version of you who already lives in abundance. When practiced consistently, they shift the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you move through the world, not through force, but through gentle, daily alignment that turns wealth from a distant wish into a natural extension of who you are. As we dive deeper into this teaching, let this be your moment to reclaim your inner balance. Emotional calibration shapes the energy you send into the world and the abundance that returns to you. Comment below, "I am aligning my emotions with wealth," to affirm your dedication to this transformation. Now, let's continue strengthening the aura that attracts the life you deserve. 6. Your environment amplifies your energy. Your environment is not just the place you live in. It is the energetic ecosystem that shapes your inner world every single day. And Carl Jung's insight that the world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you, becomes incredibly true when you realize how powerfully your surroundings influence your aura. Everything around you, the conversations you hear, the attitudes you witness, the habits you see repeated, the emotional climate of the people you interact with, all of it quietly programs your mind and either elevates or suppresses your frequency. When you stay in environments filled with negativity, gossip, fear-driven thinking, or people who operate from scarcity, your aura contracts because your mind absorbs those vibrations like a sponge. And without noticing, you start doubting yourself, lowering your standards, and believing smaller possibilities simply because that is the energy you breathe in every day. But when you consciously place yourself in spaces that uplift you, everything inside you begins to shift. When you surround yourself with people who think in terms of solutions instead of problems, growth instead of limitation, clarity instead of confusion, your aura strengthens because their energy activates something powerful within you. Jim Rohn once said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And in the realm of spiritual wisdom, this is not just motivational advice. It is an energetic law. Your aura calibrates itself based on the vibrations you allow into your life, which means your environment is essentially training your unconscious mind to either attract abundance or repel it. Every place you enter has a frequency. A messy room makes your thoughts heavier. A chaotic conversation disrupts your clarity. And a draining relationship slowly teaches your aura to expect struggle. On the other hand, a peaceful space opens your intuition. An inspiring environment expands your vision, and supportive people help your energy rise effortlessly. This is why choosing where you spend your time is not a trivial preference. It is a spiritual decision that shapes the future you are walking toward. When you begin eliminating toxic people, you are not being harsh. You are protecting your mental and emotional landscape. When you stop consuming poverty-based content, you are no longer feeding your subconscious with fear. When you replace draining habits with ones that nourish your soul, you are signaling to the universe that you are ready for more. These choices are not small. They are profound declarations of self-worth. Every time you choose calm over chaos, clarity over confusion, or growth over stagnation. Your aura becomes more magnetic, more grounded, and more aligned with abundance. Wealth is not just about money. It begins as a vibration inside you. It is the confidence. 7. Embodiment is more powerful than action alone. When you truly want to attract wealth, you cannot wait for evidence before you rise. You must become the person who already holds abundance in their mind, their energy, and their decisions. This is the essence of spirituality, the deeper dimension of spiritual awakening, where transformation starts from within, long before it becomes visible on the outside. You are not trying to convince the world, you are training your aura to recognize itself in the version of you that already succeeds. Embodiment means you walk, speak, and choose from a place of inner certainty. And this certainty is not arrogance. It is the quiet knowing that your beliefs, your energy, and your actions are aligned with the future you are stepping into. When you speak from fear, your aura shrinks. When you speak from self-worth, your aura expands, and the universe responds to this expansion. Imagine someone who desires prosperity, but consistently speaks in terms of limitation. Their actions may look productive, but their energy contradicts their goals. And because the universe responds to vibration, not performance, their effort becomes scattered, and their results remain limited. Now imagine someone else who wakes up each day already embodying abundance. They speak with clarity, they move with intention, and they choose from a place of worthiness. Their external life may not yet reflect the wealth they envision, but their energy is already aligned with it, and alignment is what activates magnetism. Magnetism is the natural pull your aura generates when your inner identity matches the reality you desire. You are no longer chasing. You are drawing opportunities toward you without force. People trust you without you needing to prove yourself, because embodiment creates an unconscious congruence that others can feel. This is why the most powerful individuals seem calm, even in uncertainty. They are not waiting for life to confirm their value. They are expressing their value through who they are being. And as this internal identity stabilizes, synchronicity begins to appear. Those meaningful coincidences Jung spoke of, unfolding in ways that seem impossible to predict, yet impossible to deny. You meet the right person at the right moment. An idea arrives when you need it most, or a door opens exactly when you thought nothing was moving. These are not accidents. They are reflections of your aura aligning with the life you are calling in. Embodiment also reshapes your subconscious mind, and because the subconscious controls the patterns you repeat, the choices you make, and the confidence you project, shifting your inner state shifts everything else. When you consistently act as the version of yourself who already has what you want, your subconscious stops treating abundance as something foreign and begins treating it as familiar. This familiarity dissolves fear, rewrites self-doubt, and strengthens your sense of worthiness. And with each internal shift, your aura grows clearer, stronger, and more capable of attracting the wealth you seek. You are not pretending. You are not acting. You are aligning. Every thought you choose becomes a signal. Every word you speak becomes a declaration. And every decision you make becomes evidence of the identity you are building. Embodiment is not a performance. It is congruence between who you are internally and who you allow yourself to be externally. And this congruence is what trains your aura to attract wealth long before the world realizes you already became the person capable of holding it. If this insight on embodying wealth resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments below. Let's continue uncovering the deeper layers of this spiritual wisdom together. 8. The 4 elements of a wealthy aura. A wealthy aura is built from 4 inner foundations that quietly shape the way you move through life. And the first is certainty, the kind of inner conviction that speaks louder than anything you say out loud. Certainty is the energy of someone who knows who they are and trusts where they are going, even when the world has not yet caught up to their vision. It is not loud or forceful. Instead, it is steady, rooted, and unwavering, the spiritual ground beneath your feet. When you carry this kind of certainty, people feel it before you speak. Opportunities sense it and begin to shift in your direction, and your life opens in ways that surprise you. As Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this truth reminds you that wealth begins inside long before it becomes visible outside. The more you develop this inner knowing, the stronger your spiritual development becomes, and the more magnetic your energy field grows. Yet certainty only becomes powerful when it is paired with calm, the emotional stillness that replaces chaos, stress, and desperation. Calm is what allows you to make choices from clarity, not fear, to respond rather than react, to move with intention instead of panic. When your energy is calm, you stop chasing wealth or grasping for outcomes because your aura no longer signals urgency or scarcity. Instead, it communicates trust, stability, and readiness, and people naturally gravitate toward that. Calm is not just a mood, it is a spiritual practice, an inner discipline that aligns you with your higher self. With calm, you create space for wealth to approach without force, because an aura that feels safe and steady is always more magnetic than an aura that feels tense and frantic. As your certainty and calm strengthen, your energy naturally expands into congruence, the alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, your words, and your actions. Congruence means you no longer live in 2 different realities, one inside your mind and one in your behavior. Instead, everything flows in the same direction. You think of wealth, you feel worthy of it, you speak with integrity, and you act like someone who is prepared to receive. This alignment is rare because most people are split inside. They desire abundance, but speak of lack. They dream of success, but behave out of fear. They want transformation, but cling to old patterns. When you embody congruence, your aura becomes clear rather than confused, strong rather than scattered, and people sense this powerful coherence the moment they meet you. From this foundation rises the final element, contribution, the ability to give value without keeping score. Contribution is one of the highest expressions of spirituality because it shifts your focus from "what can I get" to "what can I offer." This shift does not drain you, it elevates you. When you genuinely solve meaningful problems, uplift others, or create value from a place of authenticity, you activate one of the most reliable laws of abundance. What you give returns, multiplied. Contribution expands your presence, sharpens your purpose, and makes your aura feel abundant rather than needy. People trust those who contribute. The universe supports those who serve. And wealth flows naturally to those who make life better for others. In the end, remember this: when you train your aura, you're not just attracting wealth, you're becoming the kind of person who naturally aligns with abundance, purpose, and inner power. As Carl Jung taught, transformation begins within, and the energy you cultivate becomes the energy you receive. If today's message from Spiritual Wisdom inspired you, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss any of our upcoming teachings on awakening your inner wealth, the psychology of the ignored child. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. In today's video on the psychology of the ignored child, we explore how childhood silence shapes adult self-worth, emotional patterns, and the way we move through the world. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or unsure whether you deserve attention, this message will help you understand why, and more importantly, how to reclaim your inner power. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own journey and consider how these principles can bring more healing, growth, and happiness into your daily life. And before we dive deep, let me know in the comments, have you ever felt ignored during childhood? And how has it shaped you today? Your voice matters here on Spiritual Wisdom. 1. Early neglect wires the brain to expect rejection. Early neglect wires the brain to expect rejection, shaping a child's inner world long before they have the words to describe their pain. When a child is consistently ignored, their nervous system adapts to emotional scarcity, training them to survive without the warmth, presence, or acknowledgement that every developing mind needs. They begin forming what psychologists call an internalized neglect schema, a deep belief that their needs are burdens, their feelings are inconvenient, and their existence takes up too much space. This belief is not chosen. It is absorbed through repeated silence. Every unanswered cry, every moment of emotional absence becomes a quiet lesson written into the child's identity. Stay small. Stay quiet. Do not expect to be seen. As these experiences repeat, the child learns that reaching out leads to disappointment, so they retreat inward, carrying a fear that their voice will always be dismissed. They grow into adults who anticipate rejection even in safe environments, walking into rooms as though they must shrink, entering relationships with the instinct to tiptoe around their own needs, and doubting their worth even when they accomplish something meaningful. Instead of feeling proud, they wait for their success to be overlooked because invisibility feels familiar, almost natural. This emotional blueprint becomes their unconscious map for navigating life. It shapes their friendships, influences their romantic choices, and determines the level of love they allow themselves to receive. Yet beneath this pattern lies a spiritual truth that echoes through many teachings on spirituality and spiritual awakening. The child did not become silent because they lacked value, but because silence was the safest response to a world that did not know how to hold them. Their sensitivity, depth, intuition, and emotional awareness qualities that could have blossomed in a nurturing environment became internal shadows they learned to hide. What they perceive as flaws or weaknesses are often the very signs of a soul that feels deeply, observes quietly, and carries an inner richness that was never mirrored back to them in childhood. On the path of healing, Adults who were ignored as children begin to notice how this early neglect still echoes through their choices. They may avoid asking for help, fearing they will be dismissed. They may downplay their emotions, believing they are too much. They may struggle with vulnerability because being unseen taught them to guard their inner world fiercely. But as they grow more aware of these patterns, they realize that their silence was a survival strategy, not a reflection of their worth. This awareness becomes a turning point, a moment when the soul begins to remember itself. And this remembering is the essence of spiritual awakening. It is the slow, gentle process of reclaiming the voice they were forced to hide, allowing themselves to take up space, and understanding that being seen is not a luxury, but a human need. It is the shift from believing my needs are burdens to recognizing my needs are valid. It is the transformation from invisibility into presence. When they finally see that the neglect they endured was never a measure of their value, they begin to heal the silent wounds that shaped them and step into a life where they are allowed to speak, to feel, and to be fully seen. If this message speaks to your heart and you're ready to break the cycle of early rejection, repeat after me. I deserve love. I deserve attention. And I am rewriting my story today. 2. Emotional neglect leaves invisible wounds that shape adulthood. Emotional neglect leaves invisible wounds that quietly shape the way you move through the world. Because when a child grows up unheard and unseen, they learn to survive by dimming their own light, minimizing their needs, and convincing themselves that silence is safer than honesty. Unlike physical abuse, emotional neglect often goes unnoticed, but is just as damaging, and you may carry its impact without realizing that the anxiety you feel, the low self-worth that shadows your confidence, or the disconnection you sense in relationships, all trace back to those early moments when your emotions were dismissed. As a child, you taught yourself to become small, not because you lacked strength, but because no one showed you that your feelings mattered. And so you adapted by hiding your true self, suppressing your needs, and building an inner world where expressing emotion felt like a burden. Over time, this becomes a deep pattern, a quiet script your mind learned to follow, telling you that wanting care is asking too much, that speaking up is risky, and that your presence should take up as little space as possible. And as you grow older, that early silence becomes a form of armor, one that makes you second-guess your worth, apologize too often, or pull away the moment someone tries to get close. Carl Jung captured this truth when he said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because acceptance feels terrifying for someone who was taught through neglect to hide their own heart." You might feel uncomfortable when someone finally pays attention to you, not because you don't want connection, but because your nervous system was trained to expect neglect, not care. This pattern doesn't mean you are broken. It means you adapted to survive. It means your body learned to shut down rather than risk more disappointment. And your mind learned to stay quiet because it was safer than hoping for something better. Yet this awareness becomes the beginning of spirituality and spiritual development, a gentle return to the parts of yourself you once abandoned just to make it through. The numbness you sometimes feel isn't the absence of emotion. It's the shield you built to protect a heart no one protected for you. But now, As an adult, you can begin to soften that shield, to listen to the emotions you used to silence, and to give yourself the understanding you never received. You can learn to speak your needs without shame, to choose relationships where you are truly seen, and to trust that your feelings deserve space. Healing emotional neglect is not about blaming the past. It is about rewriting the inner script that tells you you're too much, too needy, or too sensitive. It is about replacing self-doubt with self-compassion, replacing fear with awareness, and allowing spirituality to guide you back to your own worth. And as you keep walking this path, remember the quiet lessons you were never taught, that your emotions are valid even when others ignored them, that needing connection does not make you a burden, that your voice deserves to be heard, and that every step you take toward emotional honesty is a step toward becoming whole again. 3. Being unseen disrupts identity formation. Being unseen quietly disrupts the very core of identity formation, because when a child grows up without emotional mirroring, they are left wandering through their inner world without a compass, unsure of who they are and unsure of how to interpret what they feel. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Yet an ignored child never even gets the chance to meet themselves fully, because no one reflected their emotions back to them in a way that made sense. You might not realize this while it is happening, but every moment of being overlooked becomes a silent message. Your feelings don't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. Your presence isn't important. And slowly, this message becomes a belief, then a habit, and eventually a personality. As you move through life with this invisible wound, you may find that self-doubt follows you everywhere. Not because you lack talent or strength, but because childhood taught you to question the legitimacy of your own experiences. When you were ignored long enough, your mind adapted by shrinking your needs, by suppressing your emotions, by convincing you that staying quiet was the safest choice. Psychologists call this internalized neglect, but spiritual wisdom reveals something deeper. When the soul is denied recognition, it begins to fracture, creating a fragile self-image that craves validation but feels unworthy of receiving it. That is why so many ignored children grow into adults who apologize for existing, who hide their accomplishments, who struggle to set boundaries, and who feel invisible even in crowded rooms. Jung understood this intimately, reminding us that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that matter. And this is exactly the prison an ignored child grows up inside, knowing they feel deeply, but never believing it is safe to express it. With each year, the patterns formed in silence become the script you unknowingly perform. You downplay your emotions because you once learned they would be dismissed. You hesitate to ask for help because you were taught you wouldn't receive it. You stay small because no one showed you how to take up space. And it isn't weakness, it is survival. The child who learned they were invisible simply became an adult who still doesn't know how to be seen. Inside, you lives that younger self, still carrying the belief that attention is dangerous, that needs are burdens, that love must be earned through silence and compliance. But the truth is that your soul was never meant to be diminished. You were never meant to live behind the shadow of neglect. And when you finally begin to understand how these wounds were formed, you also begin to see the path back to yourself, reclaiming the feelings you buried, acknowledging the worth you were denied, and giving yourself the validation, presence, and compassion that no one offered you when you needed it most. If this message resonates with you, declare it with confidence in the comments. I deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. 4. Coping mechanisms can appear as strengths, but hide pain. Coping mechanisms often look like strengths on the surface, but beneath them lies a quiet ache that began in childhood, when being ignored taught you that the only way to feel safe was to outperform your pain. Even though these traits make you appear capable and composed, they are rooted in wounds that were never given space to heal. Hyper-independence grows from a childhood where asking for help led to disappointment, teaching you that you must handle everything alone. People admire your self-sufficiency, but they do not see the exhaustion that comes from never feeling safe enough to lean on anyone. Perfectionism forms in the same silence, convincing you that if you do everything right, never cause problems, never show weakness, never make mistakes, then maybe you will finally be valued. Yet no matter how flawless you become, the fear of being overlooked lingers, because the perfection was never for joy, only for survival. People-pleasing develops as a final layer of protection, shaping you into someone who bends around the needs and expectations of others. You become agreeable, helpful, and endlessly available, because once long ago, wanting love or attention made you feel like a burden. So you learn to abandon yourself before anyone else could abandon you. Over time, these behaviors sink beyond personality into your nervous system, influencing how you breathe, how you walk into a room, and how you constantly scan for rejection before you even speak. This constant vigilance keeps you stuck in a loop where you overperform, overgive, and overthink, hoping someone will finally notice the pain beneath your strength. Yet the moment you recognize these behaviors as protective responses from a younger version of you who did their best to survive, something within you softens. This softening is the early step of spirituality and spiritual awakening, because healing is not only a mental process, it is a reunion with the forgotten child inside who still longs to be seen without conditions. With awareness, you begin questioning the old rules that once governed your life. The belief that you must earn love through silence, perfection, or usefulness. Slowly, you start practicing gentle acts of rebellion against these outdated beliefs by saying no without guilt, asking for help without shame, resting without apologizing, and allowing yourself to be imperfect without fear. Each of these small choices is you learning to love yourself differently than the world once loved you. Over time, the coping mechanisms that once hid your pain begin to transform into healthier strengths. Your independence becomes self-trust instead of isolation. Your kindness becomes compassion instead of self-erasure. Your attention to detail becomes grounded excellence instead of anxious striving. By healing the ignored child within, you do not erase your past. You rewrite its meaning. You show your younger self that they were never too much or too unimportant to be noticed. And you build a life where your strength comes not from fear, but from love, awareness, and the deep inner safety you are finally learning to give yourself. 5. The ignored child becomes the invisible adult. The ignored child becomes the invisible adult And when you have carried that silence for so many years, it shapes the way you move through life, quietly teaching you to dim parts of yourself just to feel safe. You may downplay your achievements without realizing it, brushing aside praise because being celebrated still feels foreign. And you may swallow your emotions out of habit, fearing that expressing them will lead to rejection the way it once did. You walk into conversations trying not to take up space. You hesitate before asking for help because your childhood taught you that needing anything made you a burden. And even in moments surrounded by others, you might feel a hollow emptiness inside, born not from loneliness, but from unmet needs that were never acknowledged when you were young. This inner emptiness can follow you into adulthood, influencing the jobs you choose, the relationships you accept, and the way you think about yourself. And without awareness, you may continue the cycle by ignoring your own feelings in the same way others overlooked you. Yet, the deeper truth is that this pattern is not a flaw in you, but a survival response that once helped you adapt to an environment where your emotional world had no place to land. The brain wires itself around what it repeatedly experiences, and when the experience is neglect, the mind learns to expect it, shaping beliefs that whisper, "Do not ask, do not feel, do not need." This is where spirituality and spiritual development begin to offer a path forward, inviting you to meet yourself with compassion instead of criticism, and to understand your wounds not as permanent scars, but as parts of your story that can be rewritten. When you begin to see your life as a journey of inner growth, rather than a reflection of what others failed to give you, you can begin nurturing the child within who longed for comfort and connection, offering yourself the warmth, patience, and attention you once needed so deeply. Through daily practice, you can slowly undo the inner pattern of invisibility by choosing small but powerful acts of self-recognition, pausing when you feel yourself shrinking, placing a hand over your heart when old fears resurface, or gently speaking truth into your own mind. My needs matter, my emotions are real, and I deserve to be seen. Over time, these moments become a new foundation, one where you no longer wait to disappear, but learn to take up space with confidence, honesty, and self-respect. The lesson you carry forward is clear. You are not the ignored child anymore, and you no longer need to silence yourself to feel safe. You are allowed to grow, allowed to heal, and allowed to step into a life where your presence is honored by others, and most importantly, by you. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel, and remember to turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. If this message resonates with you, type in the comments, "I am no longer invisible. I honor my worth." 6. Acknowledgement is a psychological necessity, not a luxury. You have to understand something fundamental. Acknowledgement is not a luxury in the life of a child. It is a psychological necessity that shapes the very foundation of identity. And when Carl Jung taught that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents, he was pointing directly at the silent wounds that form when a child grows up emotionally unseen. When you were small, you didn't just need food or shelter. You needed safety, stimulation, and connection. And connection was the heartbeat of your developing mind, because it told you, in the most subtle spiritual wisdom, that you existed in someone else's world. When that acknowledgement was missing, the absence did not simply fade. It shaped your brain. It shaped your sense of worth. And it shaped what you believed about love. Research shows that without consistent emotional recognition, neural pathways develop in a way that prepares a child for neglect rather than support. And slowly, quietly, you begin to expect dismissal everywhere you go. A child who is not acknowledged learns to shrink long before they learn to speak. They walk into rooms already assuming that their presence is too much. They enter friendships feeling like a burden, and they grow into adulthood carrying an unconscious script that whispers, "Stay small so you don't get hurt." You may not notice it, but this becomes a lifelong pattern. You second-guess your ideas, you question your worth, and you celebrate nothing because you anticipate that no one will notice anyway. And this is not because you lack confidence. It is because your nervous system was taught that invisibility equals safety, and that emotional silence is easier than emotional rejection. Psychologists call this internalized neglect a schema, a mental blueprint, created from repeated experiences of being overlooked. Over time, you learn not to ask for love, not to expect understanding, and not to believe that your needs matter. You grow up thinking that emotional connection is something other people deserve, not you. This is how the ignored child becomes the anxious adult, or the emotionally distant adult, or the high-functioning but deeply tired adult who carries wounds no one else sees. And yet, Carl Jung's teachings remind you that the shadow is not your enemy. It is the part of you that holds every unmet need, every silenced emotion, every truth you were afraid to claim, and it waits patiently until you are strong enough to turn toward it. When you look at this through the lens of spiritual wisdom, you realize something transformative. The ignored child inside you does not want attention. They want recognition. They want to be acknowledged the way they never were. They want someone finally to say, "You mattered then, and you matter now." And when you give yourself that acknowledgement, you begin a spiritual awakening, a return to wholeness, because healing is not about changing the past, but about changing the meaning the past left inside you. You start rewiring your brain, soothing your nervous system, and rebuilding the emotional muscles that were never given the chance to grow. You step out of invisibility not because someone finally saw you, but because you learned to see yourself. 7. Healing begins with self-recognition and small acts of validation. Healing begins with self-recognition and the small, quiet acts of validating your own inner world. Because when you finally pause long enough to notice your emotions, your needs, and even your smallest victories, you begin giving yourself what no one ever gave that ignored child you once were. Transformation unfolds the moment you acknowledge the truth that your feelings were real all along. And by naming what you feel, instead of suppressing it, you slowly dismantle the old belief that your needs were a burden. As you gently turn toward yourself, spirituality becomes something lived rather than imagined, and your spiritual awakening deepens each time you consciously offer yourself the compassion you never received. This offering might look simple, a moment of rest when your body whispers for it, a small celebration of a quiet win, or a soft reminder that your worth does not depend on how much you endure. And with every one of these choices, you teach your nervous system that it no longer needs to brace for dismissal or rejection. Speaking up becomes an act of reclaiming yourself, Because every time you say what you truly feel, you rewrite the old pattern that taught you to stay silent, to stay safe. Setting boundaries becomes a sacred responsibility, not an act of rebellion, as you let your mind and body relearn what safety feels like. Affirming your worth retrains the part of you that once believed love had to be earned through self-sacrifice. And with each boundary you hold, each truth you speak, each moment you choose not to abandon yourself, you send a new message to your inner child. You are seen. You are worthy. You matter. Over time, these consistent acts of self-respect merge into a profound energetic shift, reminding you that your healing is not only psychological, it's spiritual. And as you continue honoring your needs rather than shrinking them, you discover that the ignored child within you does not disappear. Instead, they rise with you, learning step by step what it feels like to be protected, valued, and finally loved by the one person who is meant to show up all along you. If this message helped you understand how healing begins with self-recognition and small acts of validation, take a moment to support our work by liking this video and subscribing to Spiritual Wisdom. And if you're ready to start honoring your own worth, comment below. I choose to validate myself. Your voice helps us create content that truly serves you. 8. Breaking the silence creates generational change. Breaking the silence creates generational change. Because when you have lived through childhood neglect, you carry an inner world shaped by moments where your needs were dismissed, your voice was overlooked, and your presence felt invisible. Yet that same wound often becomes the birthplace of extraordinary empathy. You move through life hyper-aware of others' feelings, sensing subtle shifts in tone or energy, because you once had to read the emotional weather just to feel safe. And this sensitivity, although born from pain, becomes a quiet superpower that guides your healing and your spirituality. You may hesitate to speak up or take up space, still expecting someone to ignore you. But with each step toward therapy, self-reflection, or conscious parenting, you are breaking the old pattern that told you your needs did not matter. This healing journey is not just personal, it is a form of spiritual development. Because the moment you acknowledge your hurt, you reclaim your inner light, the part of you that always knew you deserved care, attention, and love. As you grow, you begin to understand that the child who was ignored learned to stay silent, not because they were weak, but because silence was survival. And now, as an adult, every act of self-expression becomes an act of rebellion against the past. You learn to name your emotions, to set boundaries, to say no when you need to. And each choice rewires the old belief that you are a burden. When you choose conscious parenting, whether with your own children or your own inner child, you refuse to repeat what hurt you, offering presence where there was once absence, offering patience where there was once dismissal, and offering tenderness where there was once confusion. And just like that, the cycle of emotional neglect begins to crumble, replaced by awareness, compassion, and connection. This transformation matters because healing yourself is not just about correcting the past, it is about shaping the future. When you allow yourself to be seen, when you speak the truth that was once locked inside you, when you let yourself receive the love you used to push away, you brighten the path for the next generation. You show them what emotional safety feels like, what visibility feels like, what unconditional support feels like. The ignored child you once were becomes the healer, the guide, the cycle breaker, proving that generational wounds can be rewritten. And from this journey emerge powerful lessons. You are allowed to exist fully. Your boundaries are valid. Your voice matters. Your sensitivity is strength. Seeking support is courage. And choosing healing is choosing a new lineage. Through this inner work, you become living evidence that silence does not have to be inherited, and that a neglected beginning can transform into a legacy of awareness, emotional wholeness, and spiritual awakening. In the end, the psychology of the ignored child reminds us that silence shapes the soul just as powerfully as words. When a child grows up unseen, they often learn to doubt their worth, to shrink themselves, and to expect neglect even long after childhood has passed. But awareness is the beginning of healing. When you recognize these patterns within yourself, you reclaim the right to be heard, to take up space, and to receive love without apology. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. Your journey of healing and awakening continues here.